The next thing to know about ethics is that there's this concept of relativism, and basically ethical relativism says that ethics vary by culture. They're relative. Ethics are relative to a culture. And so, of course, that raises the next question, which is, are there universal principles? So are there universal principles about ethical behavior that even when we go across cultures, these principles still stand? So how do ethics vary by culture? What are some examples of that? Well, Nazi Germany is a classic example of that, right? Where there is different behavior that was acceptable and not acceptable. We've also seen human cultures, right, that are cannibals, and so that is acceptable to some cultures. And we've also seen, like, if you go back in time, like the Greeks would go and watch the Christians getting eaten by the lions, and that was their form of going to the movies. And where's that? The Romans? I don't remember. Where's the amphitheater? Greek feeding Christians to lions, or T, Romans feeding Christians to lions. It would have been the Romans. There we go. All right, so there's just been different ethical behavior in different cultures at different times. And so the question is even though we have relativism, right, where ethics have been relative to different cultures at different times, and you can think about cultures in a large scale, like, big cultures like Nazi Germany or America or, the Romans or the Greeks or whatever. And you can also think about culture in a more narrow scope. And so within large cultures, there are subcultures, and subcultures can have different ethical guidelines or principles of what's acceptable and not acceptable behavior. So, in America, there could be subcultures, of like ravers, where it's totally acceptable among that subculture to have certain types of behavior, or, whatever. Different cultures have different ethics. So are there ethical principles that, are universal? Are there principles of ethics that are universal? So I'm going to leave you with that question to ponder, right? Are there certain codes of conduct, right? Certain ethical behavior, moral behavior, guidelines, which are universal, which transcend all cultures. And so if you think about that in terms of like feeding Christians to lions, or crucifying people to crosses, or shipping off one type of person because they have a certain belief or look a certain way, and getting rid of them, like ethnic cleansing, genocide, right? If you think of all the different cultures that have been out there and what has been acceptable behavior in different groups, different cultures throughout the history of humanity, are there any principles which sort of transcend all of those cultures, which are universal? And so, do we as humans just have a mind that kind of conforms to the culture into which we're born and the culture in which we find ourselves? Or are there guidelines, morals, ethics that transcend that? That's the real question. I don't know if it's answerable, which really is kind of interesting when you think about it, because it does lead us towards that perspective of, like, who's to say what is right and wrong, right? That's relativism. Who's to say what is right and wrong? Who has said what is right or wrong? And our culture has certain views about what's right or wrong. So we've been born into a culture that says, hey, these things are right and these things are wrong. And but is our culture correct? And our culture's view of right and wrong is different than many other cultures that have existed and still exist today on this planet, right? So there's cultures that have views of right and wrong behavior which are in opposition with each other, currently, today, right now, on this planet. So, like, look at the Mexican drug cartel culture, where that's a more survival of the fittest, law of the jungle, sort of environment, where truly is kill or be killed, eat or be eaten. And the hierarchy is really established sort of like in a pack, where the strongest, the toughest, the luckiest are the ones who rise to the top. So what is good? What is bad? What is good? What is bad? And is there some universal sort of principle of this is always good behavior and this is always bad behavior? Really? It's kind of an unanswerable question. I'm going to leave you to ponder it.